Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we'll be breaking down what we expect to see from the Buffalo Bills tonight versus the Miami Dolphins, plus previewing key matchups and handing out our pregame superlatives. But first,
Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Week 18 edition of the Air Raid Hour Cover One Buffalo Bills pregame show, brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. And I'll tell you what, Dave, before we get into this Bills-Dolphins matchup, Sunday Night Football, AFC East on the line, I think us as Bills fans were hoping that today would be a little less stressful, but thanks to the Baltimore Ravens, and how dare the Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts not come to a tie yesterday. Thanks to those three teams in the 1 p.m. window, which kicks off in about 3-4 hours here, the Buffalo Bills' chances of going into this week 18 matchup stress-free lies on the shoulders of Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans up against the Jacksonville Jaguars today.
Yeah, I mean, look, I made a comment yesterday on social media about like the Ravens looking disinterested to play that game, and like there's a lot. I know you love the conspiracy theories, but the conspiracy theory that the Ravens lost on purpose just to keep the Bills out of the playoffs is pretty ridiculous. I saw multiple people making that comment. I'm like, the Ravens do not care about the Bills. The Ravens don't control what happens with the Bills one way or another, and they were purely trying to keep their guys healthy. They don't even care that they were letting a division rival potentially make the playoffs. They do not care. So these conspiracy theories about like they want to knock a division rival out on one side or they want to keep the Bills out on the other, it was ridiculous. But anyway, we got no help from them. We saw the press conference with Mike Vrabel earlier in the week talking about how much he hates losing and the funny interaction he had with that reporter. So let's see if King Henry and co can do something today against the Jags, a team they've lost 3 in a row against. So we'll see.
And I'll tell you what, I do kind of like the Titans' chances today. There's a number of things going on, right? This is probably Ryan Tannehill's last game in Tennessee. So Will Levis getting hurt gives him that sort of swan song. You got Derrick Henry going into a contract year into the offseason. Maybe he tries to have a big game because he's going into a offseason where he wants to get paid one more time. Ryan Tannehill wants to show some teams that he can still be a quarterback in this league. And then you have a lot of questions surrounding the job security of Mike Vrabel. Is he going to come back to Tennessee? Is he not going to come back to Tennessee? Are the Patriots going to lure him away? So I think that this could be one of those games where even though the Titans don't have a lot to play for, there actually are a lot of individuals on this team that have a lot to play for. Tannehill, Henry. I think the team might be playing for a guy like Mike Vrabel. So to me, I wouldn't be shocked if the Tennessee Titans beat the Jacksonville Jaguars today. And our guy Uber Hansen came in yesterday and said his hot take was, I hope Trevor Lawrence plays because an injured Trevor Lawrence might be less effective than a healthy CJ Beathard.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, CJ Beathard last week didn't look all that bad, right? So, I mean, ultimately, this comes down to, I think, the Titans running game against the Jags defensive front. DeAndre Hopkins in that passing game, the quietest 1,000-yard season probably you will ever hear of for a receiver. There is a chance, right? I will say this. I do like the Titans' chances better than I liked the Ravens' chances last night, just given the circumstances. But again, right, the Jags now have their backs against the wall, right? And knowing that the Jags have to win or they're bounced out of the playoffs because the Texans won last night, guaranteed themselves a playoff spot. If the Jags do win this game. It all falls on the Bills to have to win. If the Jags do lose and the Titans win, that puts the Steelers in the 7 hole, and if the Bills do end up winning, they would be hosting the Steelers in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if we all want the Tennessee Titans to win that badly, I think if we all collectively right now, all 70 plus people watching and the two of us hop on FanDuel or DraftKings right now and like punch that Jacksonville Jaguars money line for a significant amount of money, I think that would ensure a Tennessee Titans victory, just despite all of us in our pocket.
The reverse hedge, of course.
But looking at the playoff scenarios, the Bills, if the Bills lose tonight, they need a Jaguars win or their season is over. But if the Jaguars win and the Bills win tonight, the Bills will host the Houston Texans. If the Jaguars lose and the Bills win, the Bills, as you mentioned, will host the Steelers. And if the Jags lose and the Bills lose, the Bills will be back in Miami next week for a rematch with the Miami Dolphins. So a lot of stuff still to get sorted out this afternoon and this evening in the National Football League, just the way Roger Goodell likes it. So let's get away from this Titans Jaguars pregame and start to get into our Dolphins Bills pregame. We'll start with the weather. Despite the fact that a tornado touched down in Miami-Dade yesterday, the weather today, low 60s, moderate winds. There will be precipitation during the day, but that precipitation is expected to go away by the evening. So quite frankly, perfect weather tonight for the Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins. If you look at the injuries, there are no injury designations for the Buffalo Bills. Mitch Morse was questionable with an illness, but he was taken off the injury report. And then the Buffalo Bills yesterday announced that they have called up Leonard Fournette from the practice squad. My prediction for game day inactive, I think you're going to see Latavius Murray as an inactive. And I made that comment 3 weeks ago. I made that comment a week ago. I think that the Buffalo Bills have wanted to, and I think last week they finally found their excuse to bring Leonard Fournette up to the active roster on a more permanent basis. And I think it's going to be at the expense of Latavius Murray. Expect to see Alec Anderson inactive. You'll likely see Linval Joseph inactive again. Those IDLs that are currently active or were active last week did a pretty good job. Kyer Elam, DeMar Hamlin. And then it comes down to that last inactive spot. Is it going to be Von Miller for a second week in a row, or is it going to be Kingsley Jonathan? That'll be really interesting to see. Your thoughts on the possible inactives today?
Yeah, I think Murray for sure. I mean, this is coming off the heels off a game where like there were a couple situations where either Murray didn't get some short yardage, right? That he's kind of like been brought in to do. Obviously, there was a drop as well on one of those plays last week. So it seems like maybe this is the time for playoff Lenny to really maybe be
playoff push Lenny,
playoff clincher Lenny, right?
Yeah.
And Josh here says, please keep Vaughn inactive for the rest of the season, however long it is. And that to me is going to be the interesting one today, right?
Yep.
Obviously, last week it was a coach's decision for him to sit. A little bit of maybe in a different situation, right? Last week where the Bills maybe felt like, hey, against Bailey, Zappi, and Co. and the Patriots, didn't really need to put Von Miller out there. Maybe wasn't necessarily the game for him. Extra rest, whatever. Carl says, I want to see Vaughn with the extra week if it can help him get his legs.
Maybe it was motivational. Maybe it was trying to motivate him.
Maybe. And so I think from my, I guess, fandom standpoint, I would want to see Vaughn active today. But at the end of the day, this needs to continue to be a football decision for the Bills in one way or another. Like, if they don't feel like he's going to add value to that pass rush rotation, there's really no reason for him to be out there. Because also keep in mind, right, guy like Devon Achane in the screen game is going to be a problem for the Bills today. And if Von Miller is out there for those types of plays, I don't really see him adding value there either. So it's going to be interesting. I think right now, if I'm predicting, I'll say he's going to be inactive again. I mean, wow. I don't know. I don't know.
I will predict that he'll be active this week, but I will also say that I would prefer him to be inactive this week. I just think his season's done, right? Like it's over. I don't know what we're gonna do with him this offseason. Whether I think the best you can do if his legal issues get sorted out, the best you can do is hope that coming back 2 years removed from that injury, he'll get that pop back. And what Leonard Floyd is providing this year, Von Miller will provide next year. But really, just fingers crossed at this point, because the Buffalo Bills were not expecting Vaughn to have such a drop off in play. They weren't projecting this injury, etc. When they gave him this contract that really does not have it out until after next season. Looking at the Dolphins inactives, Xavien Howard is out. That's huge, right? Raheem Mostert is out. That's huge. Jaylen Waddle is out. That's huge.
Are they officially out though? Like
they're not. Xavien Howard is officially out. It's being reported that Raheem Mostert and Jaylen Waddle won't play.
Yeah.
And I don't blame the Dolphins. They've already got their playoff spot secure. They went into the postseason last year a shell of themselves, and it showed in that Buffalo game, despite the fact that they put up a fight. They just didn't have enough to overcome the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park. They've lost Bradley Chubb for the season. They've lost Jalen Phillips for the season. They've lost Connor Williams and Isaiah Wynn for the season. This is a banged up football team. Jerome Baker, coming off of injured reserve, is questionable to play. It is likely that he will play today. Javon Holland with some knee injuries. He is questionable to play. I haven't heard any reports, so my guess is he will play. They've elevated Melvin Ingram from the practice squad and Ethan Bonner from the practice squad. So this is a Miami Dolphins team that is beat up, that is clearly resting maybe some guys in Mostert and Waddle in preparation for the postseason. There's no excuse for the Buffalo Bills to lose this football game when you have the Bills injury report to the left, which is pretty blank, literally blank. Again, we've lost guys this year. Those guys haven't returned, but we've replaced them. We've moved on. We've figured things out without them. And even though some guys are dinged up here and there, compared to the Miami Dolphins, the Buffalo Bills are super healthy. No excuses today.
Compared to the Dolphins, the Bills are super healthy. And on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, the Bills are fully healthy, right? I mean, they are 100% healthy. Same offensive line now starting for the entire season for the Bills. Crazy to think that that is happening. All of their weapons are healthy, at least from an injury designation standpoint, right? Where Diggs battling through some things, maybe that hasn't kept him out of practice. But as you know, Greg Tumset pointed out in the Cover One group chat, like no one's really fully healthy at this time of year, and guys are still gutting through nicks and things like that. However, the Bills are in injury designation wise fully healthy, and on offense they're 100% healthy, right? And I made the comment on Twitter this week, like think about what we've got in place of some of these huge key injuries that we've had on defense that are guys on the IR, right? You have Rasul Douglas coming in to replace Trey White from the deadline. You have Terrell Bernard stepping up his play all season to kind of soften the blow a bit of losing Milano at that linebacker spot. I know they play different positions, but that unit, right? And then you have obviously Leonard Floyd having the seasons he's having to kind of soften the blow of the loss of Von Miller, right? And what his play could have been. So look, there's really no excuse for the Bills. I know they're on the road. I know all the pressure is on the Bills. And that's really, I think, the only thing that can get to the Bills today, right? The pressure of the moment, decision-making, you know, the ups and downs we've had of this season. And now this culminates in the ultimate up and down potentially in this game, 2 seed or bust potentially. So no excuses for the Bills. You're right from a health standpoint.
All right, we're going to get into the Buffalo Bills offense next and talk about what they can do against this Miami Dolphins defense. But first, a message from the guys over at the Cover One Buffalo podcast on how you can best support us here at Cover One.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
all for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right, taking a look now at the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Miami Dolphins defense. Let's start with the DVOA here for the Miami Dolphins defense. This is a unit that has improved under Vic Fangio. They've lost some guys over the course of the last 3 weeks, which obviously is going to affect them. They improved over the course of the year, but again, now we're talking about maybe possibly hitting the wall because of these injuries. The Bills have had chances to adjust to their key injuries on defense. The Miami Dolphins really have not had some of the time to adjust to some of these injuries, but the Dolphins are 19th in overall DVOA this season on defense. They are 18th versus the pass, and they are 21st against the run. They are 29th against the opposition's number 1 wide receiver, 15th against the opposition's number 2 receiver, 8th against the opposition's number 3 receiver, 27th against tight ends, and 22nd against running backs out of the backfield in the passing game. I look at the Dolphins DVOA statistics and I think to myself, again, just analytically on paper, which is just one aspect of previewing an opponent, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, a little bit of Dawson Knox, and James Cook should be the focal points for the Buffalo Bills offense today.
Should be the focal points, and you've been saying this basically since training camp, right? You wanted the offense to funnel through Diggs, Cook, and Kincaid, and that should matchup-wise be the case today. Obviously, the Dallas Chargers game, Kincaid only had the 1 catch combined in the 2 games, but then broke out a little bit and was probably the best receiving threat on the field last week against the Patriots with the 4 for 87. And so, look, Dalton Kincaid has a chance to really make his mark. We've seen Dawson Knox have some moments against the Dolphins in the past, but this needs to continue to be the focal point of the offense. Eric put out a tweet before this show talking about how the Dolphins either give up a third down conversion, or a first down, I should say, or a touchdown on 40% of passes completed to running backs, and that's worst in the league, or third worst in the league. So they are not great at defending the running back out of the backfield. And, James Cook has certainly ramped up that activity in recent weeks under Joe Brady. Now, there's been some concentration lapses, and we can't afford that today. However, I think talking about Kincaid, talking about Cook, that's fine. Stephon Diggs needs to break out today, I think, right? I think this needs to be his moment. There's been a lot of chatter about him in recent weeks and the struggle of getting him connected on some of these deep shots. And this narrative may be a lot different if we connect on some of these deep shots to him over the last several games, but this needs to be his moment, right? To shine, to legitimize this team, I think, heading into the playoffs, making his mark. We know he had the 3 touchdowns in week 4. He was the alpha in week 4 against this team. Can Stephon Diggs be the guy today? Sans Xavien Howard, he'll be matched up with Jalen Ramsey. That will be the matchup for me that I'm looking to see if Stephon Diggs can really kind of elevate this team overall on offense today. And I expect that he will. I do expect that he will.
Yeah, the Stephon Diggs stuff this week, especially when, our season is on the line, it's just been so infuriating. I get it from a national standpoint. That's how they get their clicks. That's how they get their views. It's an easy rage bait click. It's an easy hot take click. It's just an easy thing to say for these national guys who really have no idea what the hell they're talking about. They have no idea how the salary cap works. They just think it's a video game out there. Even some of these former professionals, it's the easy thing to say. Oh, it looks like Stephon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills are heading for a divorce. Hot take. I don't think he's going to be a Buffalo Bill next year, without looking at the salary cap hit number that the Buffalo Bills would have to take in the middle of their Super Bowl window with Josh Allen. Booger McFarland's big thing this week is get ready to see this is the last iteration of this Buffalo Bills team before they have to retool and move on to life without Stephon Diggs. That was an infuriating thing that I had to hear, because I went to work early one morning before the local radio was live, and I had to listen to the national radio on my way to work. And then you even have local guys like Tim Graham who are just being lazy, quite frankly, with their narratives and taking advantage of Stephon Diggs' struggling numbers over the past couple of weeks. And instead of doing what Eric and what Anthony do and dive into the film and put in the work, they're just blasting lazy takes like, Are the Buffalo Bills trying to prove that they can live with life without Stephon Diggs? Are they trying to show Stephon Diggs they don't need him? I mean, come on with that BS. That's so lazy. So lazy. And you're just looking for clickbait. You're just looking for rage bait. And that's why I respect the work of guys like Eric and Anthony so much, because they're not lazy. They put in the work. They're not looking for easy clicks. They know that the content that they generate might not go as viral as some of these easy rage bait stuff. But guess what? Their stuff is 100 times better because
Yep.
they work in. So I really appreciate the work that they did this week, and I want to give them a shout out and the work they've been doing for the past couple of weeks, trying to figure out what is wrong with the Josh Allen Stephon Diggs connection. And as you said, a couple of deep shots and his statistics look a heck of a lot different. So the Buffalo Bills really need to put forth an effort to get him the ball today. And it'll be really interesting to see because, as you know, Adam pointed out on Twitter, like Stephon Diggs could be dealing with this injury, like an oblique, a back, some kind of injury, and he could have been dealing with that since the London game. So
Mhm.
it'll be really interesting to see if the Buffalo Bills can get Stephon Diggs involved in this football game.
I mean, one way or another, they have to, right? Like, I think that
Mhm.
like it's time to empty the bag, right? Like your season's on the line. Um, as of right now, like I'm expecting that this game will be a win or
Mhm.
out situation for the Bills. Obviously, TBD and what happens with that Titans Jags game, but like my
Mhm.
mentality right now at 9:21 a.m. Eastern is that like the Bills have to win this game. Like that's my mentality. Not to mention the fact that like if you do win this game, like there is a decent chance that you are hosting
Mhm.
throughout the playoffs, and if something happens to the Ravens, you may end up hosting an AFC Championship game. You may
Mhm.
get the chance to play the Chiefs at home finally in the playoffs after 3 years in a row playing them on the road. Like there is a chance that this one game could be the tipping point for what the Bills really want to achieve, championship caliber, versus
Mhm.
like going back to another offseason of tons of questions and people being pretty mad with this team for the next
Mhm.
several months, right? So it's it's a culmination really, right, of this
Yep.
season and like the up and down of Stephon Diggs, the up and down of the team. I think that Stephon Diggs needs to have a big game today, and I think
Mhm.
that it's going to be, I guess, priority one for Joe Brady and this offense to figure out a way to get him more involved in a different way than they have been in the past couple of weeks. And that's where you mentioned Eric and Anthony putting the work. These screens, these things that they've been doing to try to get the ball in his hands are just not working, right? We
Mhm.
need something else. Um, and yeah, I am 100% with you. This is a
And
huge
just
game for him.
to end some of these narratives, at least give us like a break from some of these narratives. Like I really just want Stephon Diggs to have a big day today, just to shut some of these people up for
Yep.
a couple of weeks. You know it's coming in the off season, but just to shut them up for a couple of weeks, that would be great. Looking at the Miami Dolphins defensive tendencies, Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, he's obviously the guy who essentially brought this new wave of defense to the National Football League. Try to pressure with 4, invest in your D line, 2 high shell defense, drop back into zone coverage. That's, just make teams live off the underneath stuff and death by 1,000 paper cut you. That is the Vic Fangio defense to a T. And looking at the Dolphins' defensive tendencies this year, it's got Vic Fangio written all over it. Week 4 against the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins went 70% nickel. And this was against the Buffalo Bills team that was 12 personnel heavy at the time. 63% too high shell against the Buffalo Bills week 4. It was their goal to keep everything underneath to prevent Josh Allen, guys like Stephon Diggs from going over the top. 83% zone week 4 against the Buffalo Bills. They blitzed only 4 times in that football game and had a 4-man rush 83% of the time. A lot different from the cover 0, send the ship, make your life a living hell type of defense that Josh Boyer ran against Josh Allen in years past. A little bit more predictable for the Buffalo Bills too, because if you look at the Dolphins' defensive tendencies over the course of the entire season, they are 5th in the use of light box in the National Football League. They are 2nd in the NFL in the use of 2 high shell at 68%. They are 8th in the NFL in leaving the middle of the field open because they have those two high shells at 45%. They are fourth in the NFL in 4-man rushes at 77%. This is a Vic Fangio defense through and through. Pressure with 4. Don't let them take the top off. Force everything underneath. And I don't know sans Xavien Howard, sans Jalen Phillips, sans Bradley Chubb, Javon Holland with a bum knee. I don't know if the Dolphins have the dogs to make this defense work, because a Vic Fangio defense, you need elite players. And I don't think the Dolphins defense has that right now.
No, and I just put in the comment section right now with no Chubb, their two leading sackers are Wilkins and Zaire. I don't know how to pronounce
Zach Seiler, yeah.
Seiler, up the middle. And so to me, this is going to start with the interior protection. If the Bills can get that right, today and handle Wilkins and Seiler, I think that opens up the possibility for them to have a really strong game on offense. I do agree with you. Like, Javon Holland on the injury report with not just knee, but knees multiple. It's kind of funny to see that. I'm not laughing at his injury, but it's just a little funny to see knees as the injury. But we saw what the Ravens were able to do in the passing game last week against this Dolphins team. Lamar Jackson only had 4 incompletions all game against this team last week, and that was with Bradley Chubb on the field for a majority of that game. Now, the Ravens did get their running game going a bit with the Gus Bus, etc. So to me, I think one of the other topics we've been talking about, and that Eric's been trying to like figure out why this hasn't been happening through the film, through the analytics, is like the Bills not leveraging play action as much as maybe they should. They're one of the most successful teams when they do run play action, but they're one of the least. They run it some of the least in the league. So to me, that's something that I will be looking at today. Will the Bills use a little bit more play action? Maybe that's a way for them to kind of get the ball into Diggs' hands a bit easier. And the scheming of guys and getting the ball in their hands easier with the ability to catch the ball on the run, that's something we've talked about for a couple years now. They've done a decent job at it with guys like Shakir. He's been able to make the most of his stuff on the run. But to me, the Bills should be able to have a nice day on offense today if that protection up the middle holds up. I think that sets the tone for the entire day with their offense.
And I'll be really curious to see third down as well, because I just mentioned, like, Vic Fangio is a stubborn dude. Like, Vic Fangio's defense is Vic Fangio's defense, and he's got some dogs down. So I don't know if Vic Fangio is the type of guy who's going to really adjust in a crazy fashion. Like, I don't think you're going to see Vic Fangio blitzing like crazy in order to make up for the fact that he doesn't have Jalen Phillips or he doesn't have Bradley Chubb. I don't know. Like, the Buffalo Bills have faced more cover 1 on third down than any other team in the National Football League, because cover 1 involves dropping your free safety back, taking the top away, having a linebacker free to spy Josh Allen, and then literally just everyone else man on man. And the Buffalo Bills receivers this year, outside of Stephon Diggs, have had trouble separating. So it has given the Buffalo Bills fits, because I like Khalil Shakir as a player, and I think he has a spot in this offense, but he's not exactly going to beat a man 1v1 on a consistent basis. Gabriel Davis doesn't beat a man 1v1 on a consistent basis. So cover 1 has been something that teams have been attacking the Buffalo Bills with, especially on third down. Vic Fangio is this guy who runs like 83% zone here, as I pointed out. I don't know if he's going to change that tendency and give that man-to-man coverage that maybe the Buffalo Bills have been struggling with, because some of their receivers have some natural separation issues. So if you're the Buffalo Bills today, like, I'm fairly confident that they can take advantage of this Vic Fangio defense because of how stubborn and set in his ways that he is.
Yeah, and I think Josh Allen running he's had some good games against Vic Fangio defenses running, right? We go back to the Denver games a couple years back, games this year. I mean, there is a chance, and it's been, I would say, a little bit more prevalent recently with him kind of trying to use his legs a bit more. But in that first meeting between the Dolphins this year, he didn't really have to, right? He had that one nice touchdown run, right? The QB draw, the 11-yard one, the 11-yard run. But outside of that, 3 carries for 11 yards otherwise in that first meeting. Now, again, he didn't have to run as much or it wasn't needed, but I think today that could be something that maybe loosens things up a bit for this offense, right? Putting a spy on Josh Allen, maybe giving him that option of having that outlet guy like James Cook that we talked about, like make it tough for this defense, right? As much as you can. So again, Joe Brady, this could be your audition, right? For not just the playoffs, but like for next season and removing that interim tag. So you've got to empty the bag today, get creative, and this has to be, a decisive, clean decision making. Like everything really needs to be there for the Bills. And NFL Draft Fanatics here says, I thought Shakir numbers in 2022 rookie was he beat man higher percentage than most in the league.
To me, I like analytics, right? And I think there's a place for analytics in football. I'm not one of those like anti-stats guys, but I'll tell you what, I could care less about separation data. I could care less about it because I just think that there's way too much. There's way too many factors for separation data to be taken seriously, right? Like the quarterback, how long he holds onto the football, how long he doesn't hold onto the football, how much time wide receivers have, etc. I really don't care much for separation data. I trust film people when they tell me about separation and things like that. And, Eric was on Twitter this week talking about the Buffalo Bills struggles in man-to-man coverage, the struggles against cover one, receivers not separating, and the fact that the Buffalo Bills are going to have to go into this offseason and they're going to have to add some wide receivers who can separate. So for me, I factor in analytics to a lot of things. Separation is not one of those things that I factor analytics into. I trust the people who grind the tape for those, and those people are saying the Buffalo Bills, they struggle against man-to-man coverage. They struggle to quickly separate, which is something that is holding this offense back. Josh Allen, historically, this man has owned the Miami Dolphins, 10-2 career record. His only 2 losses, a Charles Clay drop in his rookie season, and the 120-degree temperatures on the sideline that knocked about half of our offense out of the football game last season. Does the trend continue today? Does Josh Allen continue to own the Miami Dolphins?
I'd like to say yes, but this team has become so unpredictable this year. Josh Allen, as much as like we want to talk about him leading the league in touchdowns, the Bills are still the number 1 third down offense in the league. So for all the talk about how up and down the season has been, they still statistically are one of the best offenses in the league. They're the best third down converting team in the league. And Josh Allen has the most touchdowns in the league. However, which real version are we going to get today? Are we going to get the Josh Allen that has been super smooth, deadly against this Dolphins team in his career? Or are we going to get maybe what we've seen the last 2 games or so against the Patriots and Chargers, where it's been a little bit slow go on offense and slow go for Josh Allen as well out of the bat? You'd like to think they're maybe due for a good game, but again, this team has been really unpredictable this year. So Roy says, "Why?"
I will always blame Charles Clay for that.
The throw was short.
I don't care the degree of difficulty on that throw and the fact that throw was made with the game on the line and the throw was catchable. Like, dude, it hit him in the friggin' chest. He might have had to get to the ground for it to hit him in the chest, but it literally went and hit him between the numbers and hit the ground. So, like, I'm sorry. I will, for the level of difficulty of that throw, I will forever blame Charles Clay. I don't even, maybe 5% blame Josh Allen, because like, what's a dude supposed to do? That was one of the first times in his career where, like, man, I don't know if there's 5 other quarterbacks in the league who could have gotten the ball there the way that Josh Allen got the ball there. So yeah, I'm 100% blaming Charles Clay. 95% blaming Charles Clay. Yeah, I don't even know if we need Josh Allen to be Superman today, right? Like, we just need Josh Allen to be steady and not stupid, right? Like, those that like take the checkdowns when they're there. Get the ball to Dalton Kincaid underneath. Get the ball to James Cook underneath. Get the ball to Khalil Shakir underneath. Like, get the ball to your guys underneath. Let them make the yards after the catch. Don't turn the ball over. Don't force the ball down the field when you don't need to force the ball down the field, because that's exactly what Vic Fangio wants you to do. And Josh Allen's had success again in his career against Vic Fangio. I think that success will continue today, but that success will be Josh Allen has to not need to be Superman. And that's, I think, the biggest X factor in this game is, especially if especially if Jacksonville wins and it's win or go home for the Buffalo Bills. I'm kind of afraid as to what that will stir up within Josh Allen if he feels like he needs to be Superman today.
Yeah, I agree. If you go and you look at the Miami defense, they have forced at least one turnover in every game since week 7. And I know they're down guys, but like that really hasn't been a huge factor from the Bills' standpoint. Josh Allen makes bad decisions, right? He has been willing to give the ball away, and I know it's not intentional, right? He's not trying to have turnovers, but the fact is, it's a trend this season that he turns the ball over at least once in almost every single game this year. And so that's another way this undermanned sort of Dolphins defense can stay in this game, is if Josh Allen feels like he has to be Superman and starts forcing things and gives the Miami Dolphins a short field on offense. Like it's going to be problematic. So we keep saying we need to, have a clean game, efficient game, but maybe more so than ever, like it doesn't have to be sort of that like highlight reel type of day for him. It just needs to be steady, take what the defense gives you, put points on the board, and get out of there with the win. Don't make it easy for this Miami Dolphins defense, right? Yeah. Like that to me is the number one thing. Don't give them cheap takeaways.
Speaking of the Bills offense, the running game, right? So it's likely going to be James Cook, Ty Johnson, and Leonard Fournette today. We mentioned earlier on this preview that the Fins are 24th in the 21st in the NFL against the run in DVOA. I think that this game plan needs to look a little bit like the Dallas game. I don't think we need to Josh Allen needs to throw the ball 15 times. I'm not getting there with that. But what I think is the Buffalo Bills need to build an early lead. I think that is going to be help you be successful in this football game. Build an early lead. And then I think you maintain that lead by running the football and keeping Tua off of the field. So I don't want to see the Buffalo Bills go away from the run for any long stretches in this football game. I want running to consistently be a part of the Buffalo Bills strategy for all 4 quarters. Obviously, that's game dependent. If we get down, hopefully we don't. We might have to pass the ball more, but I'd like to see the Bills build up an early lead and then just consistently run the football. I'm not saying they have to do it to the degree they did against Dallas, but I think if the Buffalo Bills go away from the running game today, they'll be in trouble because, as you mentioned, the Baltimore Ravens had a lot of success with the running game last week.
Yeah, and look, prior to that Ravens game, the Dolphins defense had actually done a pretty good job against opponents' running attacks. The 3 games prior to that, they had held their opponents under 100 rushing yards. One of those games was against the Dallas Cowboys, but the other 2 against the Titans and Jets, and obviously forced them out of their sort of their bread and butter, right? The Titans got down. They had to come back. So kind of took Derrick Henry out of that game. We saw a lot of Tajay Spears in that game. And obviously the Jets, that Jets game was a complete disaster for the Jets on the ground with the combination of Tim Boyle and starting like playing in that. So got to go a little bit inside the numbers a bit. And then last week, obviously giving up the big day on the ground and through the air against the Ravens. So to me, there will be more opportunities for this Bills running game to have success than maybe they would have had last week against a good Patriots defense. So again, the Bills generally, since Joe Brady's taken over, have done a pretty good job in staying with the run game, even against tough run Ds like the Eagles, etc. So to me, that I agree with you. That has to be a big part of the game plan today. You need to give the Bills and this offense really short and manageable third downs today. Make it easy. Make it as easy on Josh Allen and this offense to convert on third down as possible, and stick with that running game because you should have some success today against Miami. And I will say further to that, running to the edges, running to the tackles, avoiding Christian Wilkins, avoiding Sailor, run to the edges against this Miami defense. And I think that to me is kind of the game within the game of the running attack today for the Bills. How do they attack the Dolphins with the running game? Will they go off tackle? Will they go with that wide zone? I could see that being something that they maybe try to focus on. So we'll see, but I do need to stick with it.
Yeah, so just some cliff notes of everything we've covered so far in our offensive preview based on some of the DVOA data. Expect the Buffalo Bills to lean heavily on Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and James Cook in this game, especially in the passing game. Expect a steady dose of the running game from the Buffalo Bills today. And as you mentioned earlier in the show, and I want to highlight one more time, the interior of the offensive line, Mitch Morse, Osiris Torrance, and Connor McGovern, they're going to be really important because Roquan Davis, Zach Sealer, Christian Wilkins are three very, very good, powerful, strong football players on the interior of that defense. Any final thoughts on the offense before we move to the defense?
No, just keep it clean today. That's going to be my mantra. Keep it clean.
All right, on to the Bills defense against the Miami Dolphins offense. Let's start with a breakdown of what is, quite frankly, left with this Miami Dolphins offense. So Jaylen Waddle is reportedly out of this football game. Raheem Mostert is reportedly out of this football game. They've already lost Connor Williams and Isaiah Wynn, two interior offensive linemen for the season. They have a number of players who are managing injuries right now. Tua and his shoulder, Tyreek Hill and his ankle, Devin Achane and his turf toe. So taking a look at this Dolphins offense, obviously you have Tua at quarterback. You have Achane and a steady veteran in Jeff Wilson at running back. You're going to see a heavy dose of Alec Ingold and 21 personnel at fullback. Outside of Tyreek Hill, they're going to be rolling out Cedric Wilson and Braxton Berrios today with a little bit of Chase Claypool, Robbie Chosen, and River Craycraft. And then Dustin Smith is their tight end. Along the offensive line from left to right, Teron Armstead, Lester Cotton, Liam Eichenberg, Robert Jones, and Austin Jackson. To me, Dave, looking at what they have on paper, this game plan for the Buffalo Bills is pretty simple. Simple in theory, not so much in practice. You got to focus on Tyreek Hill and David Achane. And if you lose to the Cedric Wilsons, the Jeff Wilsons, and the Braxton Berrios of the world, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we expect that Mostert and Waddle will be out for this game. As you mentioned, you go back to the prior matchup from early this season. The Bills held Tyreek to their fewest catches in a game that he's played in. Obviously, he missed one game, but 3 catches for 58 yards was his second lowest receiving yardage total as well. And Braxton Berrios had 6 catches in that game against the Bills. But the big thing is not having to worry about Jaylen Waddle as the other X factor potentially for this Miami offense. I will say this, right? The Bills did a great job against Raheem Mostert in week 4. Only had 7 carries for the 9 yards. Devin Achane was over 100 yards on the ground, had 2 touches. So, to me, Mostert being out is maybe less of an X factor than it is Waddle being out. And I know Mostert leads the league in touchdowns this year, et cetera, whatever. But Achane is the guy to me, and Hill, right? Those are the two with Waddle out that have to be the ones you take out of this game the most you can.
Achane just seems like Bill's kryptonite. It seems like this is the kind of guy who's for the next 4 years under his rookie contract and maybe beyond, if he signs an extension with the Miami Dolphins, he's just going to be Bill's kryptonite for a very, very long time, because a lot of what he does, I feel like, is just a lot of what this defense struggles with. So not looking forward to seeing a heavy dose of Devin Achane tonight,
and he still had a good game against the Ravens last week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, the Ravens blew out the Dolphins, I know, but Achane still had a pretty good, solid game against them. He was heavily involved. So,
looking at some of the Dolphins' tendencies, they are first in the NFL in 21 personnel. You got to be ready for the fullback this week. They use motion on 84% of their snaps. That is number 1 in the NFL. They utilize play action on 22% of their plays. That is number 2 in the NFL. They are 7th in the NFL in the use of screen passes. They have 71% short drop back rate. So they love those timed quick hitters. And they are 8th in the NFL running into a light box when they are given a light box. This is a Kyle Shanahan offense with Mike McDaniel's wrinkles. So you got to expect all of those things today. Everyone's got to make sure they are dotting their T's and crossing their I's, because there's going to be a lot of window dressing.
A lot of window dressing. I mean, you look across the board, whatever statistic you want to look at, the Dolphins are one of the best offenses in the league. They're the number 1 scoring team in the league, points per game. They're the number 3 offense in yards per game. You talked about their DVOA, 5th overall, 3rd in offense, and they're 2nd in passing, 3rd in rushing in DVOA. So any major statistic, whatever you want to talk about PFF, they're the number 1 offense, number 1 passing, and number 1 running team. Number 1 running and number 1 offense in PFF's grades as well as here. So consensus wise, and you just look at them, they are one of the best offenses in the league. Now, how much of that will change without Jaylen Waddle? You mentioned the quick hitters. I expect a lot of those to Tyreek Hill, a lot of attempts at least to Tyreek Hill, to let him work after the catch. We see how dangerous he can be after the catch. So maybe in a chance or in an attempt to mitigate where the Bills should have a pretty good advantage up front against some of this injury-riddled Miami offensive line, those quick hitters should continue, right? And there's no reason for the Dolphins to go away from that. And I expect them to use the screen game quite a bit with Achane in an area where the Bills have struggled to defend. So Tua is one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the league based on the number of attempts he's had. So the Bills are going to have their hands full tackling today.
And that's what the Buffalo Bills did in week 4. What did they do? They got to Tua and they sacked him, I think, more times than anyone might have sacked him this season, right? So the keys with Tua, take away the first read, make him have to go through his progressions, because this is a timing-based offense, right? Where the first read is the key. And you got to get Tua out of structure. Yes, Tua is not aloof. He's not incapable of making plays out of structure, but he certainly is not capable of making plays out of structure to the degree that Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes is. So I'm not sitting here trying to knock Tua, because we have Dolphins fans come in here all the time like, oh, Tua can make plays out of structure. Yes, he can, but he cannot make them to the degree of, or with the consistency of, a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes, etc. So taking away Tua's first read, knocking Tua to the ground, being physical with Tua, making sure you're getting your shots on him, getting Tua out of structure, out of the pocket, making him make those off-platform throws. Those are all the things that you want to do in order to beat the Miami Dolphins. I think it'll be easier with the offensive line as banged up as they are. I think it'll be easier without Jaylen Waddle there taking some of the pressure of your DBs. But at the end of the day, Mike McDaniels is one of the better offensive minds in the league. This is one of the better offensive systems in the league. So it's, again, easier said than done.
Easier said than done. And a little wrinkle there, it was reported earlier in the week, this officiating crew calls the most penalties, right, on road teams. Saw some stat like that. So, get physical with Tua, but let's make sure we don't give away 15 yards here and just kind of give the Dolphins easy ones. So it's going to be a fine line. I expect that there will be at least probably one bad roughing the passer call on Tua today. So just mentally preparing myself for that.
What are some matchups we should watch out for as Bills fans? For me, Ed Oliver versus Liam Eichenberg. That was one where the Bills had a lot of success week 4. Obviously, Eichenberg's had more time to adjust to life as a center since then. But that is a matchup that I will be looking for in this game.
Yeah, Ed Oliver, we said, last week and the week prior, like he's deserving of all-pro consideration. Didn't even make the Pro Bowl, so maybe there's a little extra juice behind Ed Oliver this week, even more so than we've seen. But he's certainly going to have to be a tone setter for the defense, much like we said. Morse and co on the interior are going to have to kind of tone set for the offense against Wilkins and Seiler. Oliver's going to have to do the same for the Bills defense. It's a great matchup for him. I think probably one of the better matchups the Bills have. The other thing that I'll be watching for is how are the Bills going to kind of try to defend that running game out of the backfield? Where are you going to see Terrell Bernard? Or you see Jordan Boyer down near the box a bit more, and kind of maybe you have that combination of Hyde and Douglas sort of taking away the Tyreek Hill over the top, and then using Poyer and Bernard to try to maybe match up against that running back out of the backfield receiving threat for Miami. So that's going to be interesting to me to see how the Bills decide to defend that. But I think you're right. I think the biggest single advantage the Bills have probably is Oliver against that interior.
Yeah, you mentioned Terrell Bernard just now. I think him and Dotson, like that communication is going to be really important this week. This is the number one motion offense in the National Football League. They're going to try to get you moving east to west before the snap starts. So guys like Terrell Bernard, Tyrell Dotson, Teron Johnson, they're going to have to dot their T's and cross their I's today.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills have to be disciplined today, and then the Bills have to tackle well, right? This is an area we talk about almost every single week. First contact, bringing guys down at first contact is going to be big, right? I mean, Tyreek Hill, if he escapes one tackle, it could be a house call. Same for HN, right? Sound fundamentals today on defense are critical. The communication, obviously, an aspect of that, but the tackling, an area where the Bills have been hit or miss, right? Like that has to be sound today. You cannot give away cheap yards. Can't give away broken big plays to this team where one missed tackle could be the difference between, you know, a third down potentially or a touchdown for this Dolphins offense.
We got MV Mason coming in saying with a super chat. Always appreciate the super chats. He says, "Is Vaughn playing?" We will not know officially the answer to that question until about 6:45 this evening, an hour and a half before kickoff, when the Buffalo Bills announce their inactives. But at the end of the day, it's probably up to one of either Von Miller or Kingsley Jonathan. So it'll be really interesting to see what decision the Buffalo Bills make there. And we talked about that a little bit at the top of our show as well. Speaking of edge rushers, I think AJ Epinesa and Leonard Floyd, outside of Gregory Rousseau, right? Because Gregory Rousseau, I think, has been playing really well. And we'll get to Gregory Rousseau in a little bit. That's why I don't have him in my notes yet. I'm saving him for a little something later. But AJ Epinesa and Leonard Floyd. AJ Epinesa's always had success against the Miami Dolphins. He always seems to get his hand up, bat balls, which is something that helps with Tua. Groot, Miami kid, always saves the best for when he plays the Miami Dolphins, especially when he plays them in Miami. And then Leonard Floyd, who is another guy who's been feels like was Pro Bowl snub this year. Maybe not should have made the Pro Bowl with all the good edge rushers in this league, but at least should have been like an alternate, and he wasn't. So I think those three guys in combination are going to play a large role in affecting Tua in a way that affecting the way that he plays quarterback.
Yeah, nice to have Daquan Jones back as well for this. I mean, he had a sack in that first meeting. Gregory Rousseau, you mentioned, was probably the star edge rusher in that first meeting, had the 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, and the pass defense. Epinesa had a pass defense in that first meeting. So, yeah, I mean, knowing the Dolphins are going to try to attack you with some of that quick passing game, having guys like Epinesa, having guys like Rousseau with their length, getting up in the passing lanes to, you know, against Tua, shorter quarterback, likes to get rid of the ball quickly. Like those guys, like even if you don't get sacks, getting your hands up, Rousseau and Epinesa with their length, that is hugely important. Batted balls could lead to turnovers. It could lead to 4th downs, right? So even if you can't get to Tua, you got to get those arms up, and it'll be nice. Rousseau, like you mentioned, plays well in Miami and had a really monster game that first time these teams met.
And let's not forget, right? Like their time in Buffalo might be nearing an end, but Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are going to be really important in this game as well. Micah Hyde working center field, trying to keep a guy like Tyreek from taking the top off. And we've seen in the last couple of years the way Sean McDermott has utilized Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, having them sort of reading the eyes of Tua and having them jump and try to take away that first read. We saw the success the Buffalo Bills defense had when guys like Hyde and Poyer were really clicking, where the Buffalo Bills were reading to his eyes, where the Buffalo Bills were taking away that first read from Tua, forcing him to his second, his third read, giving those edge rushers more time to get there and apply pressure, getting him out of structure. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer play a huge role in that as well. So they're going to have to be on the top of their games. Special teams, Dolphins are 15th in DVOA. The Bills are in the 20s. So Jason Sanders, Bailey, they got Braxton Berrios returning kicks. They are just a middle of the road special teams unit, but hey, let's see if the Miami Dolphins try to pull out any stops today. Maybe put a guy like Devin Achane or Tyreek Hill back on special teams. I doubt it because both those guys are dealing with injury, but hey, special teams, it's 1/3 of the game. The Buffalo Bills have to continue to improve in that regard. Sam Martin has been better. Tyler Bass has been better, but those coverage units cannot make any mistakes today.
Those coverage units have been abysmal. The return units, why we continue to take kicks out of the end zone, I'll never know. I just want Tyler Bass kicking it through the end zone every single time today. As far as Jason Sanders, we saw the game a couple weeks ago against Dallas, had like that 3+ 50 yards. He seemed to be on track, having a nice season. expect the Bills to be blessed with the fortunes that they had last week against Ryland.
Yeah.
Like Sanders is a much better kicker than Ryland, and Barrios is really probably going to do both punt returns and kick returns for them. So the Bills coverage units need to be on it today. I think Sam Martin, the Bills probably going to have to punt a few times today. I wouldn't be surprised, but they need to make life difficult on Miami. Martin needs to continue that good play. So again, we don't want it to come down to special teams, but both teams, good kickers, I would say. Return units are but the Bills coverage units have been pretty bad. So that's one area where the Dolphins will have an advantage.
All right, before we get to our pregame superlatives, this show is sponsored by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And even if you're an out-of-towner like us, you can get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it is just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, let's get into it. Our pre-game superlatives. But first, we have a super chat here from Carl Tillman. He comes in and says, do you see limited time on the field for Tyrell Dodson as Sean will play more dime defense with Poyer and Rapp dropping down into the linebacker role? We've seen that a lot on passing situations in third down. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come back in passing situations in third down. But the Miami Dolphins are also a team that heavily utilizes the fullback, a team that heavily utilizes Durham Smythe, their tight end, even if it's not pass catching. So they're a team that does like to go heavy sets. So I think that you will see Tyrell Dodson a lot. But Carl, I do think you could see this situation on third down, especially third down and long.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. The Dolphins are still going to try to run the ball against this Bills front. Achane is banged up. I get that, but they're still going to try to get him, on those outside sweet, like those famous sort of plays that those Kyle Shanahan offenses are famous for, that we've seen him with players like Achane in the past, guys like Tevin Coleman, those types of runs that he's had in his style of offenses. Dodson's still going to have to be pretty involved in stopping this run, because if the Bills can't stop the run, even without Mostert, like, it's going to be a long day for this defense. So they're going to have Dodson on the field early downs.
All right, let's get into it now. Our pregame superlatives. Let's start with our take me higher player of the game. Dave, I'll start with you. Who is your take me higher player of the game?
Yeah, I mean, look, it has to be time for him, right? It has to be Stephon Diggs time today. I almost thought about breaking the rules for this one and special occasion and saying it's Josh Allen, but we'll stay away from that. It's got to be Diggs. 6 for 120 and 3 TDs last game on only 7 targets. We remember that, obviously, that great play he made on the sideline where he broke out of 2 tackles and took it to the house. I know he's going through something, oblique back, whatever, but this can change a lot of narratives. This can change a lot of the tune about this team heading into the postseason, ideally, right? If he can have a monster game today and him and Josh are on the same page. The opportunities have been there at moments here in the past few weeks, and we just haven't connected on them. So to me, it's Diggs today. He's got to be the guy.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to stick with the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go with James Cook, South Florida guy. I think he's been rejuvenated, especially in the passing game, since Joe Brady took over as offensive play caller. We talked about in our offensive preview, and guys like Eric have really talked about this week, Miami Dolphins and their struggle against running backs out of the backfield. I expect to see 15 plus carries from James Cook, and I expect to see 5 or 6 catches out of the backfield from James Cook. And I think he's going to make some chunk plays that really break this game open. My prediction, 150 plus scrimmage yards from James Cook today and a touchdown. All right, on to our wild card player of the game. This is a player that maybe doesn't get as much recognition as some of the other players, and they step up to have a big game in this one. Dave, I'll start with you. Who's your wild card player of the game?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the guy they just called up, playoff clincher Lenny. I think that, look, it was time to make the change. They, had used Murray. And look, by and large, the body of work Latavius Murray has been pretty good this year for what should have been expected out of him. He's had a pretty decent year, but it's time, right? Like Bills weren't getting what they needed to out of short yardage. There've been some issues in the passing game with Murray. Obviously, he'd been in there for pass protection, but we know Lenny has been great with that over the course of his career. He's been really a 3-down back over the course of his career. And if the Bills want to make a statement today, stick with that running game, obviously get James Cook involved in the passing game, but playoff Lenny is going to play a role, I hope, in this game today, maybe in some short yardage, maybe in pass protection. I don't know where it's going to come, but he's going to be a factor in helping the Bills win this game today. So give me playoff Lenny as my wild card.
Nice. And this one might be cheating. I don't know. But for my wild card player of the game, I don't think we've ever really clearly defined whether he is established like enough or not to be wild card. But I'm going to go with the guy I mentioned earlier, Gregory Rousseau. And I'm going to go again because of the South Florida connections. He always seems to play motivated against the Miami Dolphins. 5.5 of his 17 career sacks are against the Miami Dolphins. He's finally healthy from that foot injury that he was dealing with over the course of the season. And AJ Epinesa has all the secrets for how to embarrass Austin Jackson. So I'm sure he'll be sharing all those secrets with Gregory Rousseau over the course of the week. I'm going to say Gregory Rousseau, at least a sack. I'm not willing to go 2. And I'm going to say a forced fumble in this football game from Gregory Rousseau. A sack and a forced fumble from Gregory Rousseau in this football game.
I like it.
All right, on to our Respect You player of the game. Dave, who is the one player on the Miami Dolphins that you feel like the Buffalo Bills need to respect in order to survive this football game?
Yeah, I mean, look, Tyreek should be like the equivalent of Josh Allen when it comes to this type of superlative, right? Like it's always Tyreek, right? So it's always Tyreek. That goes without saying. But to me, it's Achane. I think Devon Achane is a guy the Bills can give the Bills a lot of trouble. Last time these two teams met, 8 carries for 101 yards, 12.8 on the ground, and 2 touchdowns. Had that long 55-yard run, chipped in with another 3 catches as well, potentially without Raheem Mostert today, which I think isn't as big of a factor against the Bills as you might hope. Although Mostert has had some moments against the Bills as well, but they did a good job against him last time. To me, it's Achane. He really scares me. Had a good game out last week against the Ravens, even in the loss. Home run threat. I know he's got battling that injury, but he is a guy that really scares me. So outside of Tyreek and potentially no Waddle on the field, I'm going with Achane as my Respect You player. That's
a good one. And there are a number of guys you can go with here. Obviously, you mentioned Tyreek is almost like that Josh Allen caliber where it's like, nah, we're gonna save this award for someone else because that's like no duh. It's kind of funny, right? Like Jalen Ramsey is a cornerback for the Miami Dolphins, and we haven't even talked about him at all on the show just because Josh Allen cooks him so much that it's like we don't sweat a guy like Jalen Ramsey. So I'm gonna go with the combination of Wilkins and Seiler in the middle of that defense. I think if the Dolphins defense is gonna have success, it's going to be against the interior of this Buffalo Bills offensive line. Guys like Osiris Torrance, guys like Connor McGovern, guys like Mitch Morse, they got to be on the top of their game today because Wilkins and Seiler have the ability to collapse that pocket, have the ability to affect the quarterback, have the ability to affect the run game, etc. So those are 2 game-breaking players along that defensive line. So you got to respect them in order to be successful. All right, let's get into our fire sale. This is our hottest take of the football game. Dave, I'll start with you. What is your hottest take heading into this football game?
Yeah, my hot take for this game is that Stefon Diggs puts up a similar stat line to what he did in week 4 against the Dolphins. I'm trying to speak this Stefon Diggs blow-up game into existence. I've been saying it since the beginning of the show. He had the 6 for 120 and 3 TDs against the Dolphins in week 4. I'm not sure my hot take's ready to go to 3 TDs, but I will say multiple touchdowns and over 100 yards for Stefon Diggs in this game. That's a hot take, I think, given the recent trend, right, of Stefon Diggs. I think, normally that maybe wouldn't be so hot, but I think 100-yard plus game and multiple touchdowns is a hot take right now for Stefon Diggs, but we will need it today and a nice momentum builder going into the postseason, hopefully the number 2 seed.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned we mentioned it in the offensive preview portion of the show. Their numbers against wide receiver ones makes you think that Stefon Diggs could have a big game today. Their number against running backs out of the backfield makes you think that James Cook could have a big game today. I think the one guy we haven't mentioned is not going to be my hot take, but the Miami Dolphins have struggled against tight ends this year. Maybe we finally get, and Dalton Kincaid has been really good this year. I obviously, with how good Sam Laporta has been in an offense that just is catered to Sam Laporta and what Sam Laporta does, there wasn't as much change because Sam Laporta went to a very similar offense. He was a lot more comfortable, could adjust quicker. He put up some big numbers for the Detroit Lions this year. If it wasn't for Sam Laporta, more people would be talking about Dalton Kincaid. But maybe this is like the big bust out game for Dalton Kincaid today, right? Given that the Miami Dolphins struggle so much against tight ends, maybe he is the one who pops off today. I'm not willing to make that my hot take, but hey, maybe fingers crossed we get like a huge Dalton Kincaid game. I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills offense in totality. I'm going to say they account for 400 plus yards and 4 touchdowns today. I think the Buffalo Bills offense is going to have success because the Miami Dolphins defense is beat up and because I think Vic Fangio is stubborn, is not going to change a darn thing to adjust to the fact that that defense is beat up. All right, let's go to our Back to the Future game predictions. Dave, I'll start with you. Paint a picture for us. What is this game going to look like today?
Going into the game, the Bills are going to be in a win or go home situation. Is my first prediction, is that the Jags will beat the Titans today. As much as I don't want that to happen, everything will be on the line for the Bills today in Miami. I think that early on in the game that we will notice the pressure getting to the Bills, but because the Miami Dolphins are undermanned in this game, I do think it's a little bit of a boxing match early. Game will be close. Ultimately, I think the Bills offense does get it going, and Stephon Diggs will be a big part of that. The Bills do enough on defense to hold Miami to, under 20 to 24 points in this game. And those 4 touchdowns you predict for the Bills offense will come to fruition. I think 4 touchdowns and a field goal for the Bills. Miami will score 3 touchdowns, and the Bills will end up winning this game 31-21 on the road.
Nice. I have a very similar prediction, but first I got a comment here from Chris Matlock. As soon as Knox came back, Dalton struggles. I don't think Dawson Knox coming back has anything to do with Dalton Kincaid's struggles. I think if you looked at the Buffalo Bills injury reports since Dawson Knox came back, Dalton Kincaid has regularly been a limited participant and wearing a non-contact jersey. Like, he's dealing with some pretty significant injuries and playing through some pretty significant injuries. And I think that's had a lot to do with Dalton Kincaid's struggles, more so than Dawson Knox coming back. But that's just my opinion. I just want to get that one out there. My prediction, Bills 31, just like you, but I have Dolphins 17. I think the injuries on their offense keep them from scoring a ton of points. Our defense is absolutely humming right now, and I think the Dolphins are pretty beat up. I think Josh Allen has a lot of career success against Fangio, and there's injuries on that side of the ball. I think the Buffalo Bills will be locked in. I think they will be focused. I think they will, fingers crossed, play mistake-free football. I think they will pull away early, and I would think they will maintain that lead for a majority of this football game. So again, the Bills 31, the Dolphins 17 is my prediction. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for sticking with us this morning. The number one way you can help us out is there's still roughly 10 hours until kickoff between Bills Dolphins. So if you think that anyone else would enjoy this Air Raid Hour Cover One pregame show, click that share button at the bottom, share it with them, text it to them, email it to them, etc. Friends, family, anyone you think might enjoy the show. Smash that like button. That helps us with the algorithm as well. And Dave, any final thoughts before we head out of here this afternoon?
Yeah, just a few things, right? Firstly, this season flew by for me.
Yeah,
we're already in week 18. We've done a pregame show every week, regular season pregame show. Hopefully we'll be doing some more postseason pregame shows.
Yes.
This may have been potentially our most watched live pregame show that we've had at one point. I think even still we have over 200 people watching live. So I just want to thank all of the viewers as well who tuned into our pregame show all season. And to you viewers, let's hope that and the comment section as well, let's hope that we have another pregame show for you in store next week. That is my hope. So thank you all, and let's get it done today.
Yeah, thank you guys. We really appreciate it. You can catch us again Monday at 9 p.m. Hopefully breaking down a Bills win and talking about a Buffalo Bills postseason that we have to look forward to. Don't forget that the Cover One post-game show is live tonight following the game as well. And David
So
Fox,
glad I don't have to do that. I'm so glad I don't have to do that. I'll tell you what.
And David Fox will have his post-game report on Cover1.football immediately following the game as well. All right, Bills Mafia, prepare yourselves for Titans Jags. Do some breathing exercises, right? Because it's roughly 10 hours until the Buffalo Bills kick off against the Miami Dolphins. And listen, I get it, right? This is a cutthroat world, win and get in, go do your business, all of those things. But at the end of the day, I really, really hope that the Jacksonville Jaguars lose and the Tennessee Titans win this football game, because just for my anxiety levels, just for the fact that I'm not ready for this season to be over. I'm one of those guys who's just I don't know. And maybe it's the wrong mindset, because all season long I've been Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, and I've been very, very critical of this football team, but also as a fan, just for bragging rights purposes, I don't want to miss the playoffs this year. Be at least we got there.
Yes.
So that little fan part of me is at least we got there. So that part of me as well wants the Buffalo Bills to maybe just be able to breathe a little bit easier this Sunday night. But I don't think that that's what the NFL script is going to have in mind. So we all know it's scripted, right? So we all know that's not what the script is going to have in mind. The Bills are going to have to win or get into the postseason.
Yeah, and one last super chat here from Carl saying, thanks, guys, for the pregame coverage all season, and let's hope it continues as we go. And look, this is the playoffs, as Les says. And yes, let's just, for our own anxiety, that 4 hours or so in between the Titans, Jags, and the Bills game, let's maybe just have that safety net would be nice.
I think I'm going to take up yoga. Today. Today is the day I finally decide to take up yoga. All right, Bills Mafia, thank you so much. And until tomorrow night, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!